part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
Hey everybody, it's your host, Don Mike Mendoza, and welcome to Producing While Asian. Thank you so much for joining us today. Our conversation is with a very good friend named Cheryl Daro. She's based in Las Vegas, Nevada, and she is both a performer and an incredible producer, been part of a company called Marshun Productions, named after her husband, Mark Chinook. And the two of them together have been producing since 2005, so many events, and they're so involved, not just in Vegas, but all around the country. And so I'm really excited for you to listen to this conversation and to hopefully learn a few things and hopefully connect with her in the future. So welcome again to Producing While Asian. Enjoy. Hey, Cheryl, welcome to Producing While Asian. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. It's so awesome to finally have you on the show. I know we've both been very busy and trying to schedule this, but I'm excited for people to hear your episode because you have so much to share and talk about, and yeah, mind exploding. And I feel like so many people in our community will benefit from hearing what you have to say. So
thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. You're on my list early. It's just taken a long time for us to get it together and do this. So let's just start right off with tell our audience about you. How did you get into the arts? How did you, end up getting into not just performing, but producing, and then landing where you are today, not just producing your own stuff, but also working within the company that you're part of, Marshun Entertainment?
Yeah, well, big question to start. I was born in the Bay Area. I was born in San Jose, California, as a lot of Filipinos are, first generation. My family came over from the Philippines in 1977. And then I was born shortly after that. I have a great group that I grew up with, obviously big Filipino family. My mom is number 7 of 8. So lots of cousins. And in terms of performing, I feel like, you're Filipino, so they force you to always perform for the titas and for your grandmas and grandpas. So I started with performing very young with the kind of, also church influences too. I was in church and we sang a lot. So I started with that, but funny enough, I was actually very shy. So I had huge stage fright growing up. And it wasn't until I was in junior high school when I went from behind the stage, behind, the curtain, to deciding to be on stage, which was a big jump for me because I actually considered myself a visual artist. So I started out painting. I was into graphic design, composition, photography. So that is actually where I started in the arts. But I kind of just cultivated this love of performing and singing, as I just feel like was in my blood. Dancing, I just loved it. So musical theater really spoke to me. Started with my first musical, which was Singing in the Rain, actually. Gene Kelly was my favorite. So I did a lot of golden era musicals at the time, but also being Asian, very hard to be in a show back then.
I'm sure.
As a lead. So I did a lot of dancing. I was an ensemble a lot, never stopped pursuing that dream as I got older, decided to go to New York, pursued acting in New York City, became a professional performer at the Actors Equity. My first show was, make a huge guess. What do you think it was?
Oh man, it's one of 3. Miss Saigon.
Right on the nose. So Miss Saigon was my first equity show. Surprise, surprise. I was very fortunate to play Gigi in that show. And my cast was pretty much all Broadway alums, which was amazing and equally terrifying at the same time. Oh, sure. Very, very scary. So
where was that production?
Gateway Playhouse, actually. And it was really great experience. I was in school and I had the audition while I was in school. Pretty much went from a class and then went to the callback and they said yes. And I booked the show for that summer. It was an amazing experience. First equity, Broadway alums, learned a show in 2 weeks, as you do when you're an equity performer. And so I'm literally with my headphones listening to the show for the first time ever, because I never listened to Miss Saigon. How surprising is that? Because I was
I'm
so
right
into,
there with you.
you know what I
Like,
mean? It was
yeah,
just very interesting because I really like golden era. So I was really in that classical style. I was classically trained as an opera singer as well. And so Miss Saigon came and I was very surprised to get that role and to book it. But from then on I was hooked. Just had to keep performing on stage. And I, again, very fortunate with my career. I was able to play Gigi once again at Signature Theater in DC. And then Rock of Ages, I played Regina, which was a lot of fun. And then I was able to do Proof, which was one of my favorite shows ever to do as an actor, but also a beautiful play that was directed by Michelle Aguillon. And she was an advocate on bringing an Asian American family to the stage in a Pulitzer Prize winning show, which was amazing. And that whole company was wonderful to work with. And it was just another really kind of big moment in my acting career. Along with that, I was also producing a lot of work myself because, as you know, being Asian, and there's not a lot of content for us out there as performers. So my background being a performer, I really wanted to do more work. And so I just kept reaching into this world of trying to, hey, can I create my own work? Can I do new works? And fortunately, in that time in New York, there was a lot of new works coming out that were really great for Asian Americans and really great kind of vehicles to promote the Asian story. So I was very fortunate at that time to be part of that as well. But really, still not a lot of work for someone like me. So I really kind of leaned into producing and kind of developing pieces that I would do or pieces that I felt would forward, like I said, that Asian story. So it's been what, I think 20 years of working as a professional actor, as a professional performer, producing with Marshun Entertainment, which is the production company with my husband, Mark Chinook. We've been producing shows together since, I want to say 2005, 2006. And again, out of a love of creating work and a love of theater, we really wanted to just keep kind of that movement alive of like, hey, can we do our own work? Yes, we can. So let's do it. So where I am now is definitely a just comes from being a performer going into producing. So our point of view and our perspective in this world is very unique. And again, being Asian American and female, it is also equally even more unique. Not a lot of those in our world. I'm hoping for more. Maybe your podcast can help. Let's make
I
more.
sure hope so. That's why we're
like
here.
more producers. Yeah. Because really that's where all of the magic happens. And I've discovered that as coming from acting into producing, and I'm sure you have too, is that's where, the stories are made. You can start from the ground up. And I do have a passion for that kind of element of it, of like really creating something from scratch. And you don't fit into any sort of hole, right? You're not fitting into like a specific spot where the Asian American fits. You're in a spot where you're making that spot. You're creating what that looks like. And that is very, very, very gratifying, very, very satisfying to be able to do.
Yeah. And it's also really hard, and it takes a specific personality to keep pushing and to
Oh
keep
my.
asking and to keep, keep standing even when it's like it feels like there's so much weight above you, being
Yeah.
like, I don't know if I can do this, and beyond just, glass ceiling and then some, like glass
Yeah,
and bamboo ceiling, like, all these things. And
for
it's
sure.
yeah. And so in all of that, like, so telling stories for sure, but like what else would keep you going? Like if you would run into adversity in this journey, because I'm sure, like all of us, we've run into a lot of that. What was, when you hit a moment like that, what would convince you to keep at it and not just be like, oh well, F this, I'm done,
Right. Gosh, there's so many moments like that. Really, really, it comes down to, I think for me, history, my past, right? We come from a culture that's immigrated to this world. Filipino, and especially like me, my mother came from the Philippines Pangasinan, Philippines, rural farm, I not like walk to school each day in the snow, but like pretty tough
But
upbringing.
maybe
It's
not
not
snow, but like extreme heat.
extreme heat, thunderstorms,
Mhm.
lots of floods, but dirt floors, no windows. So for me, history was a really big thing. I'm a huge fan of history. And again, to share that story of what my family went through to get to the place where, American dreams happen, if we were to reference Miss Saigon,
Mhm.
the American dream.
Yeah.
I have a lot on my shoulders in that sense, but grateful to have that on my shoulders. I think of it as a blessing to have that on my shoulders, to be able to share a story that might not necessarily be able to come to light to a culture and a place where we all are here in the United States. To share that story just adds to the culture that we have here. So for me, history was a very big thing. To share that story that I came from, I know for sure there are others that have the same story, and to be visible is huge. And also to the future, right? Like, I don't know what I'm going to be doing in my future for performing. I feel like I've done a lot in my lifetime. I'm not that old, but for the future generations of Asians and Asian Americans, to give them the platform to continue to thrive means that as a community, we have more space. We take up more space. And in performing arts, right, in TV, film, even in theater, I I want others to feel the feeling I felt when I saw my first Asian American on stage. When
Mhm.
I first saw Leia Salonga in Miss Saigon and said, "Oh wow, I can do that too." And I feel like I have that feeling like, yeah, I can do that too. That's gotten me through a lot of adversities. Like, no, I can do this. But to allow others to have that feeling, to have the next generation feel that and also thrive within that. And so someday we might have an equivalent to a BET, right? An equivalent to a Tyler Perry Studios kind of feel, where an Asian American is prominent in this field. Just means more stories are told, just means more visibility happens. And that is also equally important. I feel like it's worth it to me to keep pushing through adversity because of those things.
For sure. And I know that you and I had moments where we saw that like coming to life, though the moment of the future generation seeing the current people
Yeah.
that are doing it and like, being so inspired
Yeah.
last summer,
Oh,
when,
so amazing.
for our listeners, Cheryl and I produced an event called Marahuyo, which is a very deep Filipino Tagalog word for enchantment.
Mhm.
And we enchanted Las Vegas with this amazing 3-day Filipino arts festival. And like, describe for our audience what it was like to see someone from the young Filipinos cabaret see somebody from the Broadway Barcada cabaret connecting and seeing what they could be in that moment.
Yeah, it was pretty spectacular in general. The first night, and again, for those who don't know, we had a community, Las Vegas community got together to create a Filipino showcase of talent. And so pulling from the local Las Vegas community, we brought some beautiful performers, some headliners, some stars in my opinion, uh, who are from Las Vegas, born and bred. They only have Las Vegas. And we were able to bring Broadway Barcada, which was essentially there's the stars of the Filipino stars from Broadway. And such a fortunate and wonderful experience. And what a supportive community too. Broadway Barcada
So
chose
supportive.
to come and support the community performers in their show. And afterwards, outside of the venue, it was just wonderful to see the young performers see their mentors and to see their idols, these people that they've read their names, they've heard them sing online, and then they were able to actually meet them in person, and watching faces light up to these just connections. And also too with Barcada side, just seeing the graciousness and kind of this grateful feeling of seeing them perform too was really amazing. For me, when I see young performers that are Filipino American, it reminds me of me. And to bring them together was so special, because I can tell you from my experience watching them shine, I go, see, I never had a Filipino showcase growing up. I had myself in my musical theater community, token Asian girl-ish. Right. As I got older, I started to see more and more of them. But, growing up in the community, fortunately for me, being the Bay Area, I had Asians around, but not a lot doing what I was doing. And Las Vegas, it was even smaller, right? We're more of an isolated community out here. So it was, I think, even more important to bring the Barkada in for these young performers who are extremely talented, extremely gifted, and extremely motivated at a time where they are at a crossroads. I feel like Filipinos, you're at a crossroads constantly. Do I go into nursing or do I go into performing? And, I don't know what your story was like, Don Mike, but mine was hilarious when I was like, and I'm going to be a performer. And my grandma was like, so when are you finishing nursing school? Like, right.
Like about that.
So these performers, and I'm close to a lot of them, I'm like, they're ate, right? So they are going through that struggle. Can I be successful in this field? Can I push through the way that you and I have pushed through? Is there a place for me? So when they see Barkada and they see professional Filipino American Broadway performers, there's hope, right? And we can kind of keep that fire lit, because again, it's about that younger generation coming up into where we're at. And the more we can be visible in that world, the more they can see what we already see. So it was pretty spectacular. And I feel like, I don't know, Don, Mike, I mean, your thoughts on it. It was a magical moment in time. I feel like time froze for everybody in those moments where, oh my gosh, I can't even remember who it was. I think it was Ray. RJ was like, oh my God, you're Billy Bustamante.
Yeah.
And his jaw dropped to the floor, and he was just like, he just didn't know what to say. And I was just like, oh my gosh, we were able to kind of bring those two groups together and create moments that were, it was very special. Mm-hmm. Very, very special.
Same with Allie.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Came up to Allie Ewald and was like, oh my God, you're Allie. I watch you on YouTube. I know all the things you've done, and now you're here and all this stuff. And yeah, it's incredible. And I what I love about, and I'm not just gonna talk about Filipinos, but the AA now AANHPI community, there's a new one. It's like, we're our generation, we're ready to mentor the next generation. We're trying and succeeding at being available, and because we knew how hard it was without that. We didn't have anybody to go to. We didn't know who the people were. It's not like any of us could just walk up to Lea Salonga and be like, hey girl, it wasn't a thing.
But also not very many to do that with, right? So back in the day when we were kids, there was no Broadway Barkada. There was no, there's a handful of them, and they were all stars. So
they were all stars. So super inaccessible. But but with time, what I do also love about our community is that it is small enough that everybody's within a couple of degrees of separation. So while someone like Paolo Montalban might be uber famous, somebody has done a stage show with him regionally who may have done a show with you, and can make that bridge, that connection. And he is 1000% willing to be like, yes, I will talk to somebody who is young and excited to get into this business or whatever. So I think where our generation, us geriatric millennials, are doing a really good job of continuing that legacy and being available to Gen Z, who really is looking for that. And so those moments at Marhuyo were incredible. And I mean, I had one moment where I met, while I'm not a comedian, I meeting Rex Navarrete.
Oh my gosh, Rex. Yeah.
It's like, I was like, and this is going to sound really awkward, but I went up to him, I was like, Rex, growing up, I listened to your comedy song about the girlfriend you love so much who's dead in the coffin because she's no longer abusing you, and it was hilarious, and I like formed my sense of humor around your comedy growing up. And also just being like, because of him, there's people like Joe Coy, who now
Yeah.
Joe Coy is releasing a movie in a week that's all about our culture.
Wow. I
So
never
cool.
never thought that. Yeah. I
Yeah, and
never thought that.
free promo for Easter Sunday coming out August 5th, with
I
Broadway
can't
Barcada
wait.
people in it. Like
Oh yeah, yeah, that's right.
Melody, oh, I can't say her last name correctly, but Butui, she's in it, and a whole lot of other people. But I also love that. Again, Joe Coy's another example. He looked for people who were not already famous in the way that he's famous to bring them into that project. And so I think just
Yeah.
culturally across the board, that's what we're doing.
And I
So,
think culturally too, like as I feel like Asian culture in general has that multi-generational feel. So I think there is a huge, huge opportunity to really use that for us right now, right? That idea that we already have it in us to kind of cultivate the next generation while holding to the traditions of the past and our elders, right? So I feel like the millennials, like we already have that in us. And I honestly feel like we are here to cultivate the next generation. And as we do so, we will continue to cultivate it generation by generation. Because we already have that kind of in us as a community, which is again blessing, I think, a really amazing kind of
like
dynamic.
I'm so thankful that we all, to some degree, grew up with the sense of community nurturing. That when you grow up as part of specifically the Filipino community, you're not just part of your family unit. You're part of the whole community that's around you, and it's everybody pitches in because of that. Also, added layer of where our parents were immigrants in this country. They're trying to make it, and they're trying to make our lives better and all that. So, it's, and we're paying it forward now in our industry, because I feel like the generational change, that's where it's at. It's like you come in as an immigrant, those parents make life better for their children, and then their children make specifically industries better for the next generation or their children, because they don't have to establish anymore. Now it's working into the system of where they live.
The R&R podcast going to be rocking and rolling with you because football season is underway. College, Ohio State, the Power Fives, the MAC, the Browns. Michael Regai, are you ready to rock and roll with some football?
Kenny, I've been ready. This is our time of year. This is what R&R is all about. We're going to be with you every week. Kenny just said it, Browns, NFL, Ohio State centric. So you got to stay with us all fall and winter long here on R&R.
That's right. The Regai and Rhoda podcast coming to you here on the Press Play Podcast Network. Subscribe now and don't miss a show.
Hey there, this is Cheryl Daro, and this is Producing While Asian.
So in that sense, with that transformation that you've had from performer to producer, but you're still performing too, so you're not completely a producer. There's that question that we ask here, which is on the scale of 1 to producer being 10, fully producer, 1 being like, nah, not at all, which I doubt that's your answer, but or anywhere in between, where do you stand and why? Why do you land there? And I will say the answers have been very interesting. Some people who I would assume one answer, totally not their answer, and all that. So where are you there on that scale?
Wow, let's see. I feel like probably like 7 or 8, I would say. And the reason why I won't go to 10 ever is because there is an edge to being in front of the camera or on stage and behind the camera and off stage. Being in the producer chair, director chair, creative director chair, and being fully immersed on that world, to the performer side, which is no interest in anything but what's kind of in front of you. I feel like right above that halfway mark is a good spot in general. And the reason is I enjoy it. 1, the edge that you have as being a performer is you will always have your feet, per se, in our industry on the ground floor. You will always be about the story. You will always be about the expression of whatever material you have. It's about connection. And I'm not saying producing is not that focus, but the entertainer or performer focus is really the heart of it. Whereas producing can tend to be more of that technical, logistical, budgeting, the not fun stuff, as I like to tell anyone who works with me. It's like, okay, we're going to do the fun stuff, but we have a lot of not fun stuff to do. And that non-fun stuff is necessary. It's like a yin and yang. It's a balance, right? You have to have one or the other, one to have the other, in a sense. As an actor, as you need to produce yourself as a brand, right? You need to produce your career. It's really producing yourself, right? Producing your own work. If you're an artist, a musician, and you're a singer-songwriter, you screenwrite, you have to have that connection to the artistry of what you do, right? That's that connection to the universal truth. That's the connection to humanity and blah, 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 those kind of things. And I don't mean blah, blah, blah.
Oh yeah, I know what you mean, etc.
But the producer side of it is the business side, right? It's the bigger picture side. It's what is the full scope of what I'm doing? It's how do I get there? It's how much is it going to cost? It's, little things like casting you don't think about when you're an actor. Well, you do, maybe not necessarily the same way as producer. So even in the world that I'm in right now, I'm producing corporate event, right? I'm doing an award show for a company. I'm producing an award show like the Tonys. And so I'm using my experience as a performer to, one, find the talent that is cohesive and works creatively with what they're looking for, right? And then on the producer side, I'm putting together the show. I'm making sure the talent shows up at the casino at the right time. I'm making sure that the client is happy, those kind of things, right? So always important, because I feel like there's a creative kind of thing that can kind of disappear. And the balance between the two is where a lot of people don't sit, I feel like. So you're either corporate side or, that side, and there's not really an understanding of the creative. And then there's the fully creative side, but they don't know how to handle themselves professionally. So I like to think that I'm probably like a 6, 7, maybe like a 7. Let's be real. Lucky's number 7. Let's stick with 7.
Yeah.
7, probably 8.
Yeah.
Only if I'm comparing myself to like other, probably like a 7. Like I consider my 7, 8. Let's say 7, 8.
I would, I would agree with you. I'm somewhere in that ballpark too. It's because we probably produce more than we perform, but we still perform and we still keep up on those skills and keep them alive. And because, we're just growing into different types that are useful for performing. The biggest theory I have too is like, a lot of people drop off too soon because like we all get into the business at like 20, 21 and we're like, oh, I'm going to be the next whoever. And then like as time goes on, it doesn't happen. So people drop off. Mm-hmm. Then you end up becoming like, the dad that everybody knows, or the aunt or the grandma or whatever over time, because there's just less people in those arenas because they, not to their detriment, but they just like found other things to do and just didn't want to wait around anymore. And not that we're waiting around, but you get to that point where there's just a specific group of people that are still pushing along, and you end up landing in those positions and those parts because, but in the meantime, you do end up doing other things. It may be completely different, or it may be producing, and you're, you get in on that ground floor and you do hear about stories. And, I think any number you land on in that scale is important, but it's, just determining where you're at in terms of at this moment in time, because that'll probably change. Obviously the scale is not permanent. It's fine. So you might one day be like, I want to play old Asian ladies for the rest of my life in 20 years. And you're going to be like, that's just going to be my brand. Like, don't need to produce anymore. And I'm just going to do that. And you'll be the next, the mom or the grandma from Nora from Queens.
Exactly.
Yeah. You'd be like her. Lori Tan Chin. Like, everything as the grandma, and it'll be fabulous and amazing.
Yeah. So, it's interesting. And producer too is such a title. is such a wide range of skill sets too. So when people ask what I do, I say, oh yeah, I produce events. And sometimes people go, well, what? I don't understand. Oh, I'm an account manager. Oh, okay. I'm a creative director. Ah, okay. I'm an artistic director. Oh, so it's interesting that producer in itself is such a wide range of things. And even within like TV film, I'm working on a film project right now. And if you just look at the credits for films, if you just watch the credits, there's like 12 producers, there's, associate producers and things like that. And they're all very different. And what I've learned is like, well, I like producing. Okay, well, what does that mean? Within that industry, okay, well, I like to fundraise. So that is what kind of producer I'm at. I'm an executive producer or whatever, or I'm a line producer. There's so many different kinds of ways to produce within that. I feel like same thing as acting. Once you're an actor, you're always an actor. Once you're a producer, you're always a producer. And I feel like as a professional actor, you are a producer, right? So you are producing, like I said before, you're producing yourself. You're producing you as the talent, you as the product. And so I feel like, yes, you will kind of go between the two. I feel like the scale of producer is just, I think what you have always with you is always going to be with you. So yeah, even if I do end up being grandma of some sort of like, as I get older, an actor that's just playing grandmas, I'm still producing my own work. Just
exactly
not outside of myself anymore. It would just be, I'm producing myself rather than producing other people's work.
For sure. In your journey so far, have you, because I've had this moment, I came out as an actor from school, just being like, I must only be an actor and do this, and that's where I'm going to land, and this or bust. And so are there events or productions or even people that you might have had, like me, might have had an irrational fear of like, well, if I don't act anymore, I'll never work with that person, or I'll never be part of that event. But being a producer still led you to those same things. Do you have any example of that in your journey? Because I know I have plenty of those where I'm like, oh, I'll never work with that person because if I don't stay as an actor, I'll never be in a show with them. But then I ended up working with them anyway. So
yeah, kind of, not even kind of, yes. Over the pandemic, Monday's Dark, which is our charity organization that my husband and I run, we had a fundraiser that we wanted to do for our Las Vegas community, because if you don't know, Las Vegas is a small, big city. So it's a very tight-knit community, and it's either hospitality or entertainment. Our entertainment community over the pandemic was completely crushed by the pandemic because they shut down all the shows. Everyone lost their jobs in our group of people. And like I said, small community, entertainment community is very tight knit. And so when the pandemic happened, we really wanted to do something to support the community, my husband and I. And so what we wanted to do was do essentially a fundraiser telethon to bring awareness not only to the Las Vegas entertainment community, but to raise money specifically for them over the pandemic. So we did a 6-hour telethon with my husband, Mark, hosting it. And we really pulled out all the stops. And one of the things that was very surprising is the people who came out to support us were stars. And we just reached out to them between my husband and I and said, hey, we would like you to just come on the show, or, tell us, send us a video or whatever. And some of the people that came out were crazy. And
it was
one
awesome.
Of the things,
we were watching that and I was like, what?
Yeah.
Cool.
And the people that came out and did like random things for us were just, holy cow, just crazy. Celebrities, A-list celebrities, like Brad Garrett did a whole thing with us. We had, I think I can't even think of everyone off the top of my head because it was such a blur that day. But either way, we did 6 hours of a telethon, and I produced it with my husband and our team at the Space at Monday's Dark. And we raised $125,000 in that time frame, which was crazy. And in that moment, I realized, wow, it doesn't matter what that journey is. you will get there at some point. And that was when I kind of said, I'm a producer now, and it is okay. It is one of those things where we used what we had before and came back and we're like, okay, here we go. This is what we do. And we're producers now. And it's cool. And we sang, we still performed, and, he still hosts and did the thing. So, whatever that niche that you fit in, that's the niche you fit in, and just do it really well and produce it really well. And it is going to be spectacular. And that was kind of one of those moments where I realized, I can be in the arenas that I want to be in. And I don't have to be an actor to do it. But let me tell you, it really is helpful to be able to have that under my belt. So
yeah, it's that idea that in our industry and many other industries, I mean, like, we kind of have to be a one person band sometimes, and you have to know all parts of the industry, and it's just professional development, right? To be a good director, you have to know how to talk to actors. To be a good producer, you have to know how to talk to all of your staff, and deal with HR situations, because that doesn't exist most of the time, so. Yeah, I think that's awesome. And like, you don't remember, I remember who the famous people were during that fundraiser. I mean, you had like Olivia Newton-John.
Yes.
And like Shania Twain. I was like, are you kidding? I was sitting in my living room, hiding from COVID, being like, oh my gosh, it was really cool. And you're right. It, from my perspective, it was, like you said, it was a really well-produced event. And the mission was clear. The goal was clear. Everybody, you could tell, wanted to be part of this to help, because it was just the global situation at the time. And who doesn't, I mean, we know there are, but who doesn't love Las Vegas? Who doesn't love the entertainment community there? Because that's the whole reason, really, you go to Las Vegas. If you're, unless you like gambling, but like if you're, you go there to be entertained. That's what Las Vegas is known for. And so, and now recently sports teams. But,
which is also a whole other thing. But also entertainment, when you think about it. It's all entertainment. And Vegas is the entertainment capital of the world. And it was really important to remember that all the entertainers come through here. That's the other part of it with Vegas. Right. So when it was hit with COVID and like the pandemic, it was really devastating, like I said. So, and there's a lot of families and communities here as well. So, you're dealing with entertainers with families and households and multi-generational families who've been in Vegas and things like that. So it was pretty memorable moment, kind of solidified how I felt about it as being a producer, and definitely being appreciative of my background as a performer. You can reach, just like you said, you need to know how to speak to the communities. And I think in a position that we're in as a performer and a producer, you can easily speak to both sides of the fence. And I think we get more done. And it translates into, like I said, I do corporates. I'm also producing the talent. Technically, I'm like the director of production for a day club here in Vegas, and it translates. They want creative, but you also need to speak to the corporate side. You got to speak to the executives. How do you talk to the shareholders? How do you make them understand, I want to have this happen? It's creative and fun, but this is how you make money off of it. That's a very specific producer trait. And I think very much for those in our 6, 7, and 8 range, I think are the ones that can really express that well. Public speaking, thank you, acting school.
Right. For sure. You have to be so many things, like, to be successful, and it's just kind of starting somewhere.
Looking for new insights on the Cleveland sports scene with a unique side of Cleveland sports history? Then you found the perfect podcast. I'm John Sable.
And I'm Scott Sable, and we're hosts of the Sable Brothers on the Baseline podcast, a podcast about Cleveland sports, but not your typical podcast about the land's sports teams. Join us as we embark on a journey of sharing a unique and historical side of Cleveland sports history with the help of some former Cleveland sports stars and other historical figures.
All right here on the Sable Brothers on the Baseline podcast, part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
What's good, everybody? My name is Taylor Vanderbilt, and I'm the host of the Full 40 College Basketball Podcast here on the Press Play Podcast Network. On the Full 40, we talk about literally everything college basketball related. It could be women's, it could be men's, it could be recruiting, it could be the tournament. It does not matter. We cover it all. So check it out. Again, it's the Full 40 College Basketball Podcast here on the Press Play Podcast Network.
Hey there, this is Cheryl Daro, and this is Producing While Asian.
Is there anything specific to producing in Las Vegas that you feel is unique to that city that you've seen? Because I feel like you've definitely had producing experience elsewhere. So like, you know, in Las Vegas, is there something that, you know, having that be your flagship, you know, that you're like, this is something that's very unique to this community that you'd like people to know that they're thinking about coming to Vegas to produce something?
Yeah, no, for sure. One of the biggest things in terms of the arts, right? Performing arts, we're talking about producing shows and creative. And this is obviously my opinion. I am, you know, one small piece of the producing puzzle here in Las Vegas. One of the biggest things when you come to Vegas is that the demographic of people here that kind of digest that entertainment, they are not the same as LA. They are not the same as New York. So coming here and bringing something to this city, if you were to bring it to the Strip, for instance, there's definitely a different kind of vibe, right? A lot of things that people don't think about, which I do know for sure, is that the biggest things for putting shows in a casino is they want you back on the floor gambling. So that is an interesting thing. So when people kind of bring shows here, they're like, oh, two-act show, Broadway musical, super deep content, doesn't necessarily work for the Strip. They want something easy, something fun. They want something without an intermission. And that itself has created a very unique style of entertainment in Las Vegas. You'll see a lot of things like, I don't know if you're familiar with Absinthe, which is a fun interactive show. Spiegel World produces shows here that are very interactive. They involve the audience. It's a kind of circus act variety show, a lot of interactive hosts, things like that. So they have a few shows on the Strip that I feel are very highly successful in genre because it's quick, in and out, funny. You know, you have kind of spectacle and things like that. And there's other shows that are obviously geared towards the adult entertainment that work because we are also a tourist spot, right? It's essentially like a massive Times Square times a million, I want to say sometimes. But in terms of like theater and other shows like that, a lot of people don't know that there actually is a budding community for theater, local theater. And you don't hear about it a lot because we're just, you know, oh, the Strip. People ask me if I live on the Strip. Oh, it must be hard living on the Strip. I'm like, I don't live on the Strip. I have a nice house somewhere very far away from the Strip. A lot of people don't know that there is a lot of work being created in Las Vegas. So one thing as a producer here, I would say, like, bring new works to Las Vegas. Our talent pool is amazing. And we are of a school of not just singers and dancers. We have entertainers, which in itself is a completely unique group of performers. They are multifaceted performers. They can, you know, sing, dance, they can host, they can act, they can, you know, they can do a lot of things, different things. They might have an aerial act, they might, you know, juggle. So the new shows, the shows that could be created in Las Vegas that may not be good for New York would be great for Las Vegas. So as a producer, I would say, definitely come here with some fun stuff, great ideas. Immersive theater is budding here too. What a great place to do that. A lot of genres that haven't been touched yet as well. Come to Vegas, bring it, because we're here. So yeah, so in terms of that, I would say that's very Vegas specific. Producing wise, I think we do the same thing as we do in every other city. We're fortunate to be able to make money doing things like corporate events, right? I'm producing a show for a tech company at a convention, and that is unique. Our dancers are gig workers. They're legitimate gig workers. They have 3 gigs they work a day as dancers. That's pretty special. You can be a dancer in Vegas and make decent money. And you can perform at a club, then you can do a corporate event during the day. You can be one of our Vegas Golden Knights cheerleaders. So, it's a unique market. Don't come with kind of what you think New York and Los Angeles is. Come with something different. If you think that your show is different or you have something unique, Vegas is probably the best choice for you. And there's also a lot of money here.
I'm sure. Yep.
Money that supports the arts. We don't have a lot of people but with a lot of content here. So we have a lot of people with income that are very supportive of the arts. There's not a lot of avenues or a lot of places for them to put that money. So it's a cool place to be.
That's awesome. And so to close it out, for anybody that is in that next generation that we've been talking about all hour, what's your gift basket of tidbits of advice that you could drop on them that they can kind of hear and hopefully process and take what they can from it if they're looking to, hopefully become our colleagues one day?
Yeah, for sure. One of the biggest things I will say is be good at a lot of things. In our industry, we go in and we're like, ooh, I'm going to be an actor. I'm going to be on Broadway. I'm going to be on Broadway. And at the beginning of my career, and you as well, it's like, well, I'm the next Lea Salonga. I'm the next, right? And the journey is not linear. That is the biggest thing that was hardest to learn, but the best thing to know is that you will be on the scale of 1 to 10 as a producer your whole life, and it will slide, right? Like you said. And even as an actor, same thing. You will go do one thing and you'll have to do something else. So I think cultivate all the things that you're good at, that you are interested in all the time. And if you can do that, then you will always have something to do. Because I think how I got to this place of being producer is by doing all the different things. So I started as a stagehand. I went to sound. I was interested in lighting, right? If I'm going to go way, way back, started singing classical, but I really liked R&B. So it was one of those things where, oh, but can I write? Ooh, can I direct? Ooh, do you need someone to call the show? Always be interested in, I think, the industry rather than just kind of that one direction. This is what I'm doing, because you'll be disappointed. I feel like I hit a lot of disappointment when I was like, oh, I guess I'm not going to be the next Broadway star. But what my husband lovingly always says to me is, you will always be an actor. So even if it's not now, maybe in the future, 20 years from now, you'll play the grandma in some sitcom, right? So you never know. So always be good, not be good at it, but just always be interested in other ways of being a part of it. And especially as a producer, it is helpful. That moment when we were producing Marhuyo, I realized that everything I had done up to that point really led me to the moment that we were at, right? That's essentially that moment of like, aha, oh, wow. Literally everything I've done up to this point has led me to be the producer I am today. And if I didn't have interest in hanging out with the backstage crew and learning what they did, if I didn't have interest in learning hair and makeup, if I didn't have interest in photography or graphic design, if I didn't fail miserably at all of those things at one point, but continue to keep getting better at those, I wouldn't be where I am today. So I would say coming up in this generation, you have a lot of places to be, there's no doors shut at this point. There's a space for us in all industries and all facets of this industry. And so go for them, because you will be a guest star on a TV show one day, and then the next day you might just be the cameraman for that same TV show, and they need you to be there. And the more that we do that, the more we're in that world, the more visible we are, the more doors open.
Totally. And I feel like our industry is the opposite of that saying where they're like, oh, be good, where people say be good at one thing, not many things, because then you won't be good at anything. Like, I feel like we're the opposite of that. It's like, be good at everything, because you're going to be asked to do one of those things. So at least be knowledgeable of what's going on, because then you can get better at it. But
absolutely,
you touched it. Yeah.
Absolutely. And especially in our world right now, we can definitely get in. You might find something you really like more. as well.
Yeah. And I think the pandemic really did that. It really forced people to look beyond what they do, and if they didn't already, and see what other skill sets they had. So if somebody were to want to reach out to you and ask to be a mentor, or to hire you even, or to get your ideas on things, where can everybody listening to this podcast find you, Cheryl?
They can find me in Vegas. Well, I definitely have an Instagram. So you can follow me on Instagram. It's SEEDARO. Twitter as well. I'm on there. Facebook. I'm all the social medias. So yeah, they can contact me via email. You can contact me at Cheryl at Marshun Entertainment. That's my business email. But Instagram is usually where I'm at, so they can follow me there. Yeah, totally.
Awesome. Well, I'm so glad I get to hear more of your story, because I know we've been friends for a while, but it's like really great to hear more details that you don't usually get into when we're just like hanging out or stressing out about a 3-day festival beside your pool. But I'm so glad that we could finally make this happen, and to have you on here. And you're welcome back anytime, and letting me know, if there's an issue that comes up later that you're like, oh my God, we have to talk about this. I'm game. I'm ready for
Done
it.
and done.
Done and done. So thank you again, and I hope to see you and have you on again soon.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to today's episode of the Producing While Asian podcast. Our theme song was created by Luckstock. We're produced by Press Play Podcasts, and the show is edited by Michael Santos Sandoval. If you have a moment, please leave a rating and a review, and send any ideas you have to producingwhileasian@gmail.com. To follow us, stay updated, or to read our blog, visit www.producingwhileasian.com.